The world is in chaos, and the media knows just the man to solve it. Despite two wars raging in Ukraine and Israel, our troops coming under attack 73 times in the Middle East, and China setting its sights on Taiwan, Democrats and the liberal press say, thank God Joe Biden is the leader of the free world.
I also like to step back when I see some of the heat President Biden is taking and think, what would the alternative be? Can you imagine what the scenario would be in the Middle East? It would probably be the United States and Israel in a World War III-like scenario.
The world could really spiral into World War III, but it's not, because a guy who's actually had 50 years of experience.
All right, so the media thinks the man whose own staff has a bubble wrap strategy to protect him from falling in public is the one person keeping the world from the brink of Armageddon. All right, Jesse, so we should be grateful that our troops in Iraq and Syria have only been hit, I think, 74 times, and Thursday an intercontinental ballistic missile, and about half of the 66 injured have traumatic brain injury, which lasts for life. So as long as we play patsy and lie down, we're saving the world.
This is a pretty low bar. I'm not bringing back the draft. Biden 2024. Running on not starting World War III, that's the lowest of the low bars. Meanwhile, Joe Biden is telling fundraisers nuclear Armageddon is the highest risk since the Cuban Missile Crisis. He's invoking himself World War III dozens of times, and we got a land war in Europe, we got a hot war in the Middle East, we got a cartel war. This place is going nuts. We just tested a new nuclear weapon in Nevada. He deployed additional soldiers to Europe. Meanwhile, Donald Trump, I think, was the first president in a very long time, not only to not initiate a new war, but to not send additional troops to a theater. So to say that, oh, he's going to just break out into World War III doesn't make sense when you consider what happened that term.
You know, Dana, right now we're hearing that there are 10 hostages, or a 10-month-old Israeli boy in the family have been moved by Hamas to another terrorist group, I think the PIJ, the Palestinian Islamic Jihadists in the West Bank. And I understand that, I mean, I'm told that that's because they're getting information from the hostages and they're getting intelligence. So where does that put us when even they are not together in terms of where these hostages are?
Yeah, I can't imagine, like, if I was there in the Oval Office, I just imagine, and I'm not, and I don't have the weight of all of this, and I understand that there's lots of different considerations, but a 10-month-old baby being, these are such monsters. And the fact that we were not able to get proof of life, so that means that Hamas now can have even more extreme emotional blackmail against all of the families. And guess what else they get? Negotiations for a further ceasefire as they continue to rearm. Also, while we were on the air at 5:12 today, Jennifer Griffin from the Pentagon tweeted this, that there's a report that an Iranian drone flew near the USS Eisenhower in the Persian Gulf today, November 28th, and it was in international waters. The Iranian drone ignored multiple warnings from Ike. The Pentagon, this is the quote, is deeming this interaction unsafe and unprofessional. Yeah, absolutely. So this is not something that we are provoking. They are provoking us. And at some point, there will be a reaction. And I hope that it's the right one. And I don't envy them for all of the things that are going on. But a lot of the policies led to a lot of this. So I think that when they talk about all of their accomplishments, a lot of their accomplishments in the Biden administration are also their vulnerabilities going into the election.
You know, Greg, these are the same people who think the way you commented yesterday, that isn't it great that Hamas is releasing the hostages without even considering what happened on October 7th? It's like there's this veil that's covering what the acts were.
Well, that's why there will be perpetually involved in this endless cycle of tit for tat, because they look at people as evil as opposed to the acts of evil. If you describe each act independently as good or evil, and obviously October 7th is evil, then you cannot justify it. But as long as you say those people are evil, then you can talk about history and context and open air prison and all this other stuff that's been going on for 60 years. That's why they don't do it. I don't think Joe Biden's gone far enough. Under his watch, we've had no World War III. We've had no bubonic plagues. We've had no alien invasions. I mean, from outer space, that is, Jessica. And also, we've had no zombie apocalypse. So in that context, who cares if we have a relentless crime wave or a collapsing education system or a military and police in decline, rising anti-Americanism, real estate collapse, you know, a transportation system in total disarray from planes, trains to EVs. I still can't get an EV Bentley. That's a callback. Anyway, we got open borders, we got inflation, we got 2 wars. But again, no bubonic plague, no World War III, no space aliens, no zombie apocalypse. I think on the whole, it's a win-win.
Yeah, and they think so too.
Yes.
Jessica, if you were handling the negotiations, what would you want?
I would want everybody out right away in some sort of negotiation for territory and control, I'm sure is what Hamas would want in exchange for this. And that seems to be a bit of the sticking point that we've seen in the past couple of days. Reports have been coming out of Israel that Bibi has been talking to people within the government, saying, you know, I'm the only person who's going to be able to maintain control over the West Bank and Gaza after all of this is over and we get the hostages out. And that's what it is. I mean, this has been the fight since the inception of modern day Israel after World War II. And I won't say that I'm surprised because I have spent enough time around the table with you guys to know how you think about this, but it's incomprehensible to me to blame Joe Biden for this. I mean, if you want to talk about a world leader who turned their back on a pressing concern about what's going on in the Middle East, let's talk about Bibi Netanyahu and that he spent the 8-9 months before this attack happened having to send troops to the other side of the country because he wanted to overhaul the judiciary to keep him in office forever and completely gut their version of the Supreme Court. Over 80% of Israelis have a negative view of him. People in his own administration have taken responsibility, saying we ignored signs, whether it's the report from Egypt or the fact that it will take you a couple years to build up what Hamas has managed to do. So Joe Biden, his standing on the world stage in terms of what world leaders think of him is up, what people in other countries think is up. And I think it's dereliction of duty, this narrative that's going on in the media and certainly in the liberal media, where they just want to crap on him. Because if you look at like the Morning Consult poll, the first poll taken since the ceasefire began, came out, first major poll, Biden's up 4 points and is now up 1 over Trump. There was a YouGov poll out last week that had Biden up over Trump. The New York Times Siena poll, which we gave its due, and we talked about the fact that Biden was down and he was losing the swing states in the crosstabs, and the New York Times didn't even cover this part of it. The crosstabs revealed that if Trump is convicted of anything, and he has 91 counts that he's facing, he loses by 10 points, and he loses every single swing
What's that got to do with what would you do to negotiate to get the hostages
I answered, no, but
okay,
because
we're not talking
Trump
about Donald Trump.
2 points in the real
in
quick.
the average, I didn't. But my point
but
is
that's
that
not
it
the
is more
topic.
fun.
That's not the topic.
You always say that's not the topic.
Because you go off topic.
Let's not talk about who goes off topic here.
The crosstabs.
Really?
But it is relevant because you start out by saying this guy is a moron and we're in a hot war here and a cold war here and the border's open and whatever. So I'm talking about what's going on in the ground.
No.
No, I'm talking about the general.
Jessica, we have not had a zombie apocalypse. Let's just remember that.
Yeah.
How do you know?
And
Have you seen MSNBC?
And
Stop
you know
it.
what? It's unfortunate. The way this president cares about soldiers is enabling more attacks on our
What are you
soldiers.
talking about?
But I'm talking, and I made a statement. And
And I
coming
made
up,
a statement.
here we go again.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.